The massive chamber fell silent as the alien hologram flickered to life in the center of the room. Commander Seokmin stood with his arms crossed, watching the strange creature that called itself Ambassador Kale. The being looked like a tall, stick insect made of blue crystal, its multiple eyes glowing as it spoke through a translation device that made its voice sound like grinding metal. Lieutenant Hana sat at her console, recording everything while trying not to stare at the alien. 3 months ago, she had been tracking radio signals from deep space. Now she was part of first contact with an entire galactic civilization. The weight of it made her hands shake slightly as she typed. Dr. Boram leaned forward in his chair, studying the alien with the intensity of a scientist seeing something impossible. He had spent his whole career wondering if life existed beyond Earth. Now he was looking at proof that not only did it exist, but it had been watching humanity for centuries. The alien ambassador continued speaking, its crystal body shifting colors, as emotions seemed to flow through it. The translation came through in broken English that gradually improved as the machine learned human speech patterns. "We are the Galactic Council," Kale said. "We represent 43 species across the spiral arm of the galaxy. We have watched your kind for many of your generations. We have seen your wars, your violence, your constant fighting. We believed you were too primitive to contact." Seokmin felt his jaw tighten. He had fought in 3 major conflicts before being assigned to the Terran Defense Initiative. The alien's words felt like an insult, even though he knew they probably saw things differently. "But now we need your help," Kale continued. "Something terrible has awakened in the dark spaces between stars. We call them the Devourers. They are an ancient enemy that we thought was gone forever. They sleep for millions of years, then wake to consume everything in their path." The holographic display changed, showing images that made everyone in the room go quiet. Vast ships that looked like they were grown rather than built moved through space like a plague. They surrounded planets and began tearing them apart, feeding the raw materials into massive processing centers that created more ships, more weapons, more devourers. "They are not like us," Kyle explained. "They do not think as individuals. They share one mind across billions of bodies. They do not negotiate, they do not surrender, and they do not stop. They only consume and grow stronger." Hana watched the images of destroyed worlds and felt sick. Entire civilizations wiped out in weeks. Billions of lives ended so these things could build more of themselves. The scale of destruction was beyond anything in human history. "We have lost 12 worlds already," Kyle said. "Our fleets cannot stop them. Our weapons barely damage their ships. They adapt to everything we use against them. They learn from every battle and become harder to fight." Captain Taeho, who had been quiet until now, finally spoke up. He was an older man with scars on his face from the resource wars. His voice was rough from years of shouting orders in battle. "What makes you think we can help when your advanced technology cannot?" he asked. The alien's crystal body flickered, and for a moment it seemed almost embarrassed. "Your species fights differently than ours. We have rules about warfare. We avoid civilian targets. We try to minimize casualties. We fight to win, but not to completely destroy our enemies." "And?" Seokmin asked, though he was starting to understand where this was going. "You do not fight that way," Kale admitted. "We have watched your conflicts. You fight with complete commitment. You use any weapon available. You target anything that helps your enemy. You fight until your enemy cannot fight back, not just until they surrender." The room was quiet for a long moment. The alien was right, and everyone knew it. Human warfare was brutal compared to what most civilized species would accept. Humanity had spent thousands of years perfecting ways to kill each other efficiently. "The Devourers cannot be reasoned with," Kale continued. "They cannot be negotiated with or convinced to stop. They must be completely destroyed, or they will eventually consume the entire galaxy. We need soldiers who understand that kind of total war." Dr. Boram cleared his throat. "What exactly are you asking us to do?" "Fight alongside our fleets. Share your tactical knowledge. Help us learn how to wage the kind of war that can actually stop them." The alien paused. "But you must follow our rules of engagement. No targeting of civilian populations. No weapons of mass destruction. No excessive force beyond what is necessary. Captain Tejo started laughing, a sound with no humor in it. The alien seemed confused by his reaction. "You want our help fighting a war for the survival of the galaxy," Tejo said. "But you want us to fight it your way." "Yes," Kale replied. "We cannot abandon our principles even against such an enemy. That is what makes us civilized." Seokmin stepped forward, his voice cold and steady. "Ambassador, with all due respect, you came to the wrong species if you want a civilized war." The alien's crystal body flickered rapidly, showing what might have been confusion or fear. "I do not understand." "You watched us for centuries," Seokmin said. "You saw our wars and called us primitive because we fight without mercy. But now you want us to save your galaxy using the same methods you looked down on. You cannot have it both ways." Hana looked up from her console. "The Devourers you describe sound like an extinction-level threat. If they win, everyone dies. If we fight them with half measures and lose, everyone dies. The only difference is whether we feel good about ourselves while we are losing." The alien ambassador was quiet for several minutes, its body shifting through different colors as it seemed to be communicating with others they could not see. "The council is divided," Kyle finally said. "Some believe we should accept your methods if it means survival. Others believe that becoming monsters to fight monsters means the monsters have already won." Captain Tejo stood up, his old soldier's instincts taking over. "In my experience, the time for philosophical debates ends when the enemy is at your door. These devourers of yours are not going to stop and wait for you to decide what you are comfortable with." "We know," Kale admitted. "That is why we are here. Our outer defense lines are failing. We estimate 6 months before they reach the core worlds where most of our population lives." Dr. Boram was studying the tactical data that had been shared with them. "Your fleets are designed for limited conflicts between rational opponents. The Devourers are neither limited nor rational. You need different tactics entirely. What do you recommend?" the alien asked. Seokmin exchanged glances with his team. They all knew what needed to be said, but none of them were sure the aliens would accept it. "Total mobilization," Seokmin said finally. "Every resource, every weapon, every tactic that can help win. No restrictions except what is necessary to achieve complete victory." "That could mean," Kyle started. "It could mean a lot of things," Seokmin interrupted. "Things you might not like, but the alternative is extinction for everyone." The alien's body had turned a deep blue color that the translation system identified as distress. "We will need time to discuss this with the council." "How much time?" Tejo asked. "Several weeks, perhaps months." "You do not have months," Hana said, looking at the tactical displays. "Based on their current advance rate, you have maybe 4 months before they break through your inner defenses." The room fell silent again as the weight of the timeline settled on everyone present. 4 months to decide the fate of the galaxy. Finally, Seokmin spoke. "Ambassador, we will help you. But understand that when you ask humans for help in a war, you get human methods of warfare. We do not know any other way." The alien flickered one last time before the hologram disappeared, leaving the humans alone with the knowledge that everything was about to change. Outside the building, normal life continued. People went to work, children played in parks, and traffic moved through busy streets. None of them knew that their species had just been asked to save the galaxy, or that accepting meant becoming something the universe had never seen before. Seokmin looked at his team and saw the same grim determination in their eyes that he felt in his own heart. They had been given an impossible task with impossible restrictions, but they were human, and humans had a long history of doing impossible things when survival was at stake. The war for the galaxy was about to begin. 6 months had passed since first contact, and Earth looked like a different world. Admiral Jiwon stood on the observation deck of the orbital construction platform, watching dozens of new warships take shape in the zero-gravity shipyards. The pace of construction was unlike anything humanity had ever attempted before. Below her, the planet glowed with the lights of factories that never stopped running. Every nation had put aside their differences to focus on the single goal of building a fleet capable of fighting an enemy that could consume worlds. The old conflicts over resources and territory seemed petty now that extinction was the alternative. General Dong-wook walked up beside her, his weathered face showing the strain of the past months. He had been pulled out of retirement to lead the Terran War Council, the new organization that controlled all of Earth's military forces. His reputation for ending conflicts quickly and completely had made him the obvious choice for the job. The Yaur First Battle Group will be ready for deployment in 2 weeks, he said. 40 ships, all equipped with the new weapon systems. Ji-won nodded, still watching the construction. Any word from our alien friends about their comfort level with our preparations? Dong-wook's expression darkened. They are getting nervous. Ambassador Kale has been asking a lot of questions about what exactly we are building. The weapons in question were the result of Project Prometheus, led by engineer Soo-jin. She had taken the alien technology samples and redesigned them according to human military doctrine. Where the aliens used elegant energy weapons and sophisticated shield systems, humans had created brutal kinetic weapons and armor-piercing munitions. Soo-jin herself arrived at the observation deck, carrying a data pad with the latest test results. She was a small woman with intense eyes who had spent the last 6 months working 20-hour days to give humanity the tools it needed. The kinetic bombardment platforms are ready, she reported. We can accelerate tungsten rods to 15% of light speed. The aliens are calling them primitive, but primitive works if it punches through enemy armor. What about the other projects? Ji-won asked. The fusion-powered projectile weapons are showing excellent results against simulated devourer hulls. We are also making progress on the boarding systems. The boarding systems were another human innovation that the aliens found disturbing. Instead of trying to disable enemy ships from the outside, human tactics called for breaking into them and destroying them from within. It was dangerous and expensive in terms of casualties, but it was also highly effective. Dr. Ng walked into the conversation, overhearing the last part. She had been working on what the aliens considered the most controversial project of all. Her background in biological warfare had made her the natural choice to develop weapons that could target the Devourer's biological components. The viral agents are ready for field testing, she announced. We have 3 different variants that should be able to corrupt their biomechanical systems. General Dong-wook looked uncomfortable. Are you certain they will only affect the Devourers? As certain as I can be without live testing, Yoonji replied. But we need to understand that these weapons violate most galactic conventions about biological warfare. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Colonel Young-ho, who had been training the first wave of human troops to work with alien allies. His expression suggested he had news that nobody would like. We have a problem, he said without preamble. The alien observers are requesting a full review of our training methods. What specifically? Ji-won asked. Everything. Our casualty acceptance rates, our target selection criteria, our rules of engagement. Young-ho handed her a formal complaint document. They are particularly concerned about our willingness to accept what they call excessive losses in pursuit of mission objectives. The complaint was several pages long and covered nearly every aspect of human military doctrine. The aliens were horrified by human acceptance of casualties, the willingness to destroy infrastructure to deny it to enemies, and the concept of total warfare, where every resource was considered a legitimate target. They want us to fight their way, Dong-wook said after reading through the document. Limited objectives, minimal casualties, preservation of civilian infrastructure. That is exactly how they have been losing to the Devourers for the past year, Soo-jin pointed out. Their methods do not work against an enemy that adapts and learns from every encounter. The debate was interrupted by an emergency communication from the Galactic Council. The main display screen activated, showing Ambassador Kale along with several other alien representatives. All of them looked agitated. Humans of Earth, Kale began. We have received disturbing reports about your military preparations. We must discuss the weapons you are developing and the methods you plan to use. Admiral Ji-won stepped forward to respond. Ambassador, we are preparing to fight the war you asked us to fight. Our methods may be different from yours, but they are designed to achieve victory. Victory at what cost? another alien demanded. This one looked like a floating jellyfish made of metal and light. Your weapons are designed to cause maximum destruction rather than minimum necessary force. The Devourers are not going to be stopped by minimum necessary force, Colonel Young-Ho interjected. They are an extinction-level threat that requires extinction-level responses. But your planet cracker missiles, a third alien said, its voice filled with horror. You are building weapons that can destroy entire worlds. Dr. Yunji stepped into view of the camera. Those weapons are designed to deny the Devourers resources and infrastructure. If we cannot hold a system, we must ensure they cannot use it either. That is genocide, the jellyfish alien declared. You would destroy billions of lives to deny them to the enemy. We would evacuate populations first, General Dongwook said calmly. But yes, if the choice is between losing a system to the Devourers or denying it to them completely, we choose denial. The aliens were quiet for several minutes, clearly communicating among themselves through methods the humans could not observe. When they spoke again, it was Ambassador Kale who served as their representative. We cannot authorize such extreme measures, he said. There must be another way to fight this war without abandoning everything that makes us civilized. Commander Seokmin, who had been quiet during the exchange, finally spoke up. With respect, Ambassador, you have been trying to find another way for over a year while the Devourers consume 12 of your worlds. How many more worlds are you willing to lose while you search for a civilized solution to an uncivilized problem? We Xiaodoyam cannot become monsters to fight monsters, Kale replied. If we do that, then the monsters have won regardless of the outcome of the war. The monsters win if everyone is dead, Captain Tejo said bluntly. Philosophy is a luxury for people who are not facing extinction. The conversation continued for another hour, with neither side willing to compromise. The aliens wanted human military effectiveness, but with alien ethical constraints. The humans argued that you cannot fight a total war with limited means and expect to win. Finally, Admiral Jiwan ended the debate with a simple statement. Ambassador, we will help you fight this war, but we will fight it our way, using our methods and our weapons. You can accept our help under those conditions, or you can continue losing with your current approach. The alien transmission cut off abruptly, leaving the humans alone to consider what they had just committed to. They had essentially told the galactic government that Earth would save the galaxy whether the galaxy wanted to be saved that way or not. Are we doing the right thing? Dr. Yunji asked quietly. General Dongwook was quiet for a long moment before answering. We are doing the necessary thing. History will decide whether that was also the right thing. Over the following weeks, human preparations continued at an accelerated pace. The aliens continued to object to human methods, but they also continued to lose ground to the Devourer advance. Desperation was beginning to overcome their moral objections. The first human battle group launched 3 weeks later, commanded by Captain Jin Woo aboard the heavy cruiser Soul's Hammer. They were heading to the Kepler defense line, where the combined fleets of 12 species were making what might be their last stand. As the human ships accelerated toward their first battle, everyone knew that everything was about to change. The galaxy was about to discover what happened when humanity answered a call for help with total commitment. The aliens had asked for warriors. They were about to get exterminators instead. The Kepler defense line was collapsing when Captain Jinwoo's battle group arrived. From the bridge of the Soul's Hammer, he watched 12 species' finest warships retreating in organized formations while Devourer vessels pursued them like wolves chasing sheep. The alien fleet moved with precision and discipline, their energy weapons creating brilliant light shows against Devourer armor that barely seemed to notice the attacks. When their casualties reached 15%, they would pull back to regroup, just as their military doctrines demanded. The Devourers had learned to expect this pattern. They would press their advantage during the retreats, then adapt their defenses during the regrouping periods. It was a losing strategy that the aliens could not seem to break away from. All ships, this is Jin Woo, the captain broadcast to his fleet. Ignore standard formation protocols, deploy assault pattern Omega, and prepare for close engagement. Lieutenant. He-Jin monitored the tactical display from her position aboard the assault transport Busan's Fury. Her job was to lead the first human boarding action against Devourer vessels, something that no galactic species had ever attempted before. "Boarding pods armed and ready," she reported. "Demolition team standing by." The human ships scattered in what looked like chaos to the alien observers. Instead of maintaining defensive formations, they moved independently toward the Devourer fleet. Their approach pattern seemed random, but it was actually designed to confuse enemy targeting systems. The first wave of kinetic kill vehicles launched when the human ships were still at maximum range. These were simple tungsten rods accelerated to 30% of light speed by magnetic launchers. They had no guidance systems and no warheads, relying entirely on kinetic energy for destruction. The Devourers had adapted their defenses against energy weapons over millions of years of warfare. They had never encountered weapons that were simply very fast rocks moving at relativistic speeds. The impact was devastating. Devourer ships that had shrugged off the most powerful alien energy, weapons were torn apart by simple mass moving at incredible velocity. Their adaptive armor was useless against pure kinetic force. "All boarding teams prepare for launch," He-Jin ordered, as the Soul's hammer closed with a damaged Devourer vessel. "Remember, we are not here to capture anything. We are here to destroy everything we cannot hold." The boarding pods were another human innovation that horrified alien observers. Instead of trying to disable enemy ships from outside, humans would break into them and fight room by room until the ship was destroyed from within. He-Jin's pod slammed into the Devourer hull and began cutting through the armor with fusion torches. The moment the breach was complete, her squad poured through in powered armor, carrying plasma cutters and demolition charges. The interior of the Devourer ship was a nightmare of organic and mechanical components fused together. Walls pulsed with biological rhythms, while mechanical systems hummed with alien purpose. The air was thick with chemical smells that would have been toxic without environmental suits. "Spreading out to find critical systems," He-Jin reported, over her comm system. "Setting charges on anything that looks important." The Devourer crew, if they could be called that, were even more disturbing than their ships. They looked like a cross between insects and machines, with biological parts grafted onto mechanical frames. They moved with perfect coordination, sharing information instantly through their collective consciousness. This coordination was also their weakness. When He-Jin's team destroyed a critical communication node, an entire section of the ship suddenly became confused and disoriented. The Devourers in that area began fighting each other, unable to distinguish friend from foe without their network connection. "Interesting," she reported. "Their hive mind depends on physical infrastructure. Take out the network and they lose coordination." This information was immediately shared with the rest of the human fleet, who began targeting communication systems. Specifically, within minutes, Devourer ships were experiencing cascade failures as their collective consciousness fragmented. But the real surprise came when Dr. Yunji's bioweapons activated across the Devourer formation. The viral agents she had developed were designed to corrupt the biological components of their biomechanical systems, turning their own bodies against them. The effect was horrifying even to the humans who had created it. Devourer ships began turning on each other as corrupted code spread through their networks. Their adaptive systems became self-destructive, causing them to literally tear themselves apart. Admiral Ji-won watched from her command ship as the tide of battle shifted completely. The Devourers, who had been winning easily just hours before, were now in full retreat. But retreat was not something humans were willing to accept. "All ships pursue and destroy," she ordered. "Do not allow any enemy vessel to escape." The alien allies were shocked by the human approach to victory. Their own military doctrines called for accepting enemy surrender and allowing defeated forces to withdraw. The humans seemed determined to destroy every single Devourer ship. "Human Admiral," came a transmission from the Vorthak battle commander. "The enemy is retreating. Why are you continuing the attack?" "Because retreating enemies can regroup and attack again," Ji-won replied coldly. "We are here to win, not to fight the same battle repeatedly." The pursuit continued for 18 hours as human ships hunted down fleeing Devourers across 3 star systems. By the time it was over, the Devourer Vanguard had been completely destroyed. Not a single enemy ship survived to report back to their main force. The alien commanders requested a meeting aboard the Galactic Council flagship to discuss what they had witnessed. Admiral Jiwan attended along with General Dong Wook, who had arrived with reinforcements during the final phase of the battle. "Your methods are effective," admitted Council Admiral Vex, a being that looked like a crystalline tree, "but they are also brutal beyond anything we have seen before." "War is brutal," General Dong Wook replied. "That is its nature. Trying to make it civilized only makes it longer and more costly." "But you used bioweapons," another alien commander protested. "You violated the Geneva Conventions of Space Warfare." Dr. Yunji, who had been invited to explain the scientific aspects of the victory, stepped forward. "The Geneva Conventions were written for conflicts between civilized species who value life. The Devourers are not civilized, and they do not value life. Fighting them with civilized rules is like trying to negotiate with a plague. You also targeted fleeing enemies," a third alien pointed out. "That is considered a war crime in most galactic legal systems." Captain Jinwoo laughed, the same humorless sound that Captain Taeho had made months earlier. "War crimes are committed against people. These things are not people. They are a disease that consumes everything in its path." The meeting continued for hours, with the aliens expressing horror at human methods while also acknowledging their effectiveness. The humans remained unapologetic about their approach, arguing that the situation required extreme measures. "The question now is what happens next," Admiral Vex said finally. "The Devourers will adapt to your tactics, they always do." "Let them try," Admiral Jiwan said. "We have barely begun to show them what human warfare looks like." Over the following weeks, the human approach to the war became clear. While the aliens had been fighting a defensive war to protect their territories, the humans were fighting an offensive war of extermination. Every action was calculated not just to defeat the Devourers, but to ensure they could never threaten anyone again. Human deep strike teams began hunting down Devourer supply lines and manufacturing facilities. Instead of trying to capture these assets, they destroyed them completely, denying the enemy any chance to recover or rebuild. The aliens watched in fascination and horror as humanity revealed the true scope of their strategic thinking. They had not just come to help win battles, they had come to win a war by making it impossible for their enemy to continue fighting. When alien leaders complained about human methods, General Dong Wook gave them a simple choice. "You can have our help fighting this war our way, or you can continue losing it your way. But you cannot have both." The Devourers were about to learn that they had encountered something the galaxy had never seen before. Not just another civilized species with advanced technology, but a species that understood that some enemies could only be stopped by becoming more ruthless than they were. The real war was just beginning, and humanity intended to finish it permanently. The war had been raging for 2 years when Colonel Kyung-soo's deep strike team discovered something that changed everything. Deep in the Outer Rim territories, hidden in a system the Devourers thought was secret, they found the ancient seed ships that had originally created the entire Devourer species millions of years ago. Kyung-soo stood in the ruins of what had once been a Devourer manufacturing facility, studying the massive vessels through his helmet's display. Each seed ship was the size of a small moon, filled with the original programming that drove the Devourers to consume and expand across the galaxy. "Command, this is Deep Strike 7, he reported through his long-range communicator. "We have found the source. Uploading coordinates and tactical data now." The discovery sent shockwaves through both human and alien commands. The aliens saw it as a chance to understand their enemy better. The humans saw it as an opportunity to eliminate the threat permanently. General Dong Wook called an emergency meeting of the War Council to discuss the implications. Representatives from 12 alien species attended, along with the human military leadership who had been directing the war effort. "These seed ships contain the core programming that drives all Devourer behavior," Dr. Yunji explained to the assembled group. "If we can destroy them, we can potentially stop the entire species from functioning." Ambassador Kale, who had become more accepting of human methods as the war progressed, still showed concern. But destroying them would mean genocide of an entire species, even if that species is hostile. They are not a species in the way you understand it, Captain Mi-young interjected. She had been leading scientific missions to study captured devourer technology. They are more like a virus that has achieved spaceflight. They exist only to consume and replicate. The debate that followed revealed the fundamental difference in thinking between humans and their alien allies. The aliens, even after witnessing devourer atrocities, still believed in the possibility of coexistence or containment. The humans had concluded early in the war that total extermination was the only solution. The seed ships are located in the galactic core, Admiral Jiwan announced, displaying a tactical hologram of the galaxy. The journey would require crossing half the galaxy through devourer-controlled space. The logistics alone would be enormous, then enormous, Admiral Vex corrected. It would require sacrificing most of our combined fleets just to get a strike force close enough to attempt an attack. Engineer Su Jin had been working on this exact problem for months. She stood to address the council with her characteristic intensity, her eyes bright with the fever of someone who had found a solution to an impossible challenge. Project Ragnarok is ready for implementation, she announced. Automated ships, powered by artificial black holes, each carrying enough antimatter to crack a planet. The crews would be volunteers, because the mission is one way. The aliens fell silent as they absorbed the implications. The humans were proposing to build a fleet of doomsday weapons and launch them on a suicide mission to the center of the galaxy. The radiation alone would kill anyone aboard those ships long before they reached their target, one alien scientist protested. We know, Su Jin replied simply. That is why they are volunteer missions. Captain Taeho stood up, his weathered face showing the strain of 2 years of constant warfare. I will command the lead ship, he announced. If we are going to hell, we might as well drag them with us. The alien representatives were horrified by the casual way the humans discussed sacrificing themselves for the mission. In their cultures, such actions were considered either heroic beyond measure or insanely reckless. There must be another way, Ambassador Kale pleaded. Some solution that does not require such massive sacrifice. General Dong-wook looked at the alien with the patience of someone explaining simple facts to a child. There is no other way. The devourers cannot be reasoned with, cannot be contained, and cannot be allowed to survive. This is not a war for territory or resources. This is a war for the right of all other life to exist. The meeting continued for hours, but the outcome was never really in doubt. The aliens could object to human methods, but they could not offer effective alternatives. The devourer main force was already beginning to withdraw from all fronts, sensing the threat to their core systems. What the aliens did not know was that authorization for Project Ragnarok had never been requested. The fleet had been built in secret and launched 6 months earlier while the debates were still ongoing. Admiral Jiwan revealed this fact during the final phase of the meeting, causing an uproar among the alien representatives who felt they had been deceived. You launched weapons of mass destruction without authorization from the Council, Admiral Vex accused. This violates every treaty we have. We are not signatories to your treaties, Jiwan replied calmly. We are here as volunteers helping you save your galaxy. We will do so using our methods and our judgment. The aliens began to understand that humanity had never really been asking for permission. They had been informing their allies of what they intended to do, not requesting approval for their actions. Over the following months, the true scope of human strategic thinking became apparent. While the aliens had been focused on individual battles and local victories, the humans had been planning the complete elimination of the devourer threat on a galactic scale. Deep strike teams hunted down devourer resources with systematic thoroughness. Human ships appeared in systems that were supposed to be secure, destroying manufacturing facilities and supply depots that had been feeding the war machine for millions of years. The bioweapons developed by Dr. Yunji evolved and spread through devourer networks, creating cascade failures that turned their own collective consciousness against them. Entire fleets would suddenly become confused and begin attacking each other as corrupted programming spread through their systems. Captain Mi Young's science teams worked around the clock to understand Devourer technology and develop countermeasures. Every piece of captured equipment was analyzed, reverse-engineered, and turned into a weakness that could be exploited. The aliens watched in amazement and horror as humanity demonstrated what total warfare really meant. Every resource was utilized, every advantage exploited, and every enemy capability systematically destroyed. This is not war as we understand it, Admiral Vex confided to Ambassador Kale during a private meeting. This is extermination conducted with scientific precision. They told us from the beginning, Kale replied sadly. We came to them asking for help, and they told us we would get human methods of warfare. We simply did not understand what that meant. Meanwhile, Captain Tejo's Ragnarok fleet was deep in Devourer space, fighting their way toward the Galactic core. The journey had already cost them half their ships, but the survivors pressed on with grim determination. The Devourers were beginning to understand that they faced something unprecedented. For the first time in millions of years, they were fighting an enemy that was more ruthless and more committed to total victory than they were. The galaxy held its breath as the final phase of the war approached, with the fate of all life hanging in the balance of a battle at the center of the galaxy between an ancient evil and a species that refused to accept any outcome except complete victory. The final battle began 3 days before the galactic core was scheduled to be destroyed. Captain Tejo's Ragnarok fleet emerged from hyperspace to find 10,000 Devourer vessels waiting for them in perfect formation around their ancient homeworld. The sight was both beautiful and terrifying. The Devourer homeworld was a massive construct that had been consuming dark matter for millions of years, growing larger and more complex with each passing age. It pulsed with alien energy, surrounded by defense platforms that could destroy conventional fleets with ease. All ships, this is Tejo, the captain broadcast to his remaining vessels. We are outnumbered 1,000 to 1, facing odds that would make rational beings surrender. Today we prove that humans are not rational. Only 43 ships remained, from the original Ragnarok fleet. Each one carried enough antimatter to crack a planet, and each one was crewed by volunteers who knew they would never see home again. The journey through Devourer space had cost them everything except their determination to complete the mission. Lieutenant Commander Hyo Jin monitored the tactical display from the bridge of the destroyer Inchin's Wrath. As the youngest officer, in the fleet she had volunteered despite having every reason to live. Her family had begged her not to go, but she understood what the older officers did. Some battles could only be won by people willing to pay any price for victory. Enemy fleet is moving to intercept, she reported. They are not trying to negotiate or understand our intentions. They know exactly why we are here. The Devourers had learned much about human warfare over the past 2 years. They knew that humans did not retreat, did not surrender, and did not accept partial victories. This final battle would be fought to complete annihilation. The first wave of Devourer attacks came from weapons that could have destroyed Earth's moon in a single shot. The human ships absorbed damage that should have been impossible to survive, their crews working frantically to keep systems operational long enough to complete their mission. Hull breach in sections 4 through 7, reported Chief Engineer Sang-wook from the engine room of Tejo's flagship. Artificial gravity failing on multiple decks. We have maybe an hour before the ship comes apart. Then we had better finish this quickly, Tejo replied, his voice calm despite the chaos around him. The human fleet implemented the martyrdom protocol, turning each damaged ship into a guided missile aimed at the Devourer homeworld. When their weapons failed, they would use their ships themselves as weapons. Back on Earth, Dr. Yoonji watched the battle through long-range sensors while her ultimate bioweapon prepared to activate across all Devourer networks simultaneously. She had spent 2 years perfecting a virus that would turn the Devourer's greatest strength against them. Activating the final payload, she announced to the War Council. This will affect every Devourer in the galaxy at the same time. The weapon was her masterpiece of biological warfare, designed to corrupt the collective consciousness that connected all Devourers across space and time. As they died, they would experience every death they had caused across millions of years of conquest. The effect was immediate and devastating. Devourer ships throughout the galaxy suddenly stopped fighting and began screaming across all communication frequencies. The sound was transmitted through their biomechanical systems, a chorus of agony from an entire species experiencing the accumulated suffering they had inflicted on countless worlds. At the galactic core, the Devourer defense fleet began turning on itself as corrupted programming spread through their networks. Ships that had worked in perfect harmony for millions of years suddenly became enemies, their crews unable to distinguish between friend and foe. Captain Tae-ho seized the moment of confusion to push his remaining ships through the defensive perimeter. Engineer Sujin's black hole generators activated as planned, creating artificial singularities that began consuming the dark matter reservoir that powered the Devourer homeworld. All ships prepare for final approach, Tae-ho ordered. Remember what we came here to do. The remaining human ships launched their antimatter warheads in a coordinated strike that would have been impossible if the Devourer defenses had been functioning normally. The weapons detonated in sequence, creating a chain reaction that began tearing the ancient construct apart. Admiral Ji-won watched from the command center on Earth as the sensors registered the death of the Devourer homeworld. The explosion was visible from halfway across the galaxy, a new star burning where the center of an ancient evil had once existed. But victory came with a cost that horrified even humanity's allies. 90% of the human expeditionary force was dead, including everyone in the Ragnarok fleet. Earth's population had dropped by 2 billion as entire generations had volunteered for missions that required ultimate sacrifice. The planet's economy was in ruins from total war mobilization. Entire cities had been converted to weapons factories. Families had been torn apart by the demands of constant warfare. The Earth that emerged from the war was scarred in ways that would take generations to heal. Yet when the victory celebration was held in the Galactic Council chambers, the surviving human officers showed no regret for what they had done. Admiral Ji-won stood before representatives of 43 species who owed their existence to human sacrifice. "You asked for our help against a threat that would have consumed the galaxy," she said when asked if the cost had been worth it. "We gave you exactly what you needed. Warriors willing to pay any price to ensure complete victory." General Dong-wook added his own perspective to the ceremony. "The Devourers are extinct, every single one, down to their last spore and their final ship. That is what we promised, and that is what we delivered." The aliens struggled to understand how humans could be so matter-of-fact about such enormous sacrifice. Entire worlds had celebrated the victory, but the humans seemed to view it simply as a job that had needed to be done. Ambassador Kale spoke for many when he asked how humanity could justify such losses for the sake of others. Commander Seok-min, one of the few surviving members of the original First Contact team, provided the answer that would become legendary throughout the galaxy. "You begged for help. We answered with total conflict. The galaxy is safe because we were willing to become what others could not, monsters in service of life itself." The victory celebration continued for days, but humanity withdrew from galactic politics immediately afterward. They had achieved their objective and had no interest in the gratitude or horror of other species. The human fleets returned to Earth to begin the long process of rebuilding their world and their species. They left behind a galaxy that was safer than it had been in millions of years, but also a galaxy that would never forget what humans were capable of when pushed to their limits. In the years that followed, the story of humanity's war against the Devourers became the subject of countless books, documentaries, and academic studies. Scholars debated whether the human approach had been necessary or simply the product of a species that was naturally inclined toward violence. But among the species that had been saved by human sacrifice, there was no debate. They understood that sometimes survival required doing things that civilized beings preferred not to think about. The humans had been willing to do those things so that others did not have to. Earth became known throughout the galaxy as the world of necessary monsters, a place where beings lived who could be counted on to do whatever was required when extinction threatened all life. The galaxy's golden age began in the shadow of that reputation, built on the knowledge that somewhere in the cosmos lived a species that refused to accept defeat as long as any chance of victory remained. Captain Tae-ho's final message, transmitted just before the Ragnarok fleet completed its mission, became humanity's epitaph in galactic history. "If we are going to hell, we are taking them with us. The Devourers were gone forever. and the galaxy was safe because humanity had answered a plea for help with total commitment to victory, regardless of cost. It was exactly what the aliens had asked for, even though they had not understood what they were requesting until it was too late to change their minds.